What's up, gang? Andrew Cooper here. No Howard Bender today. He's off doing baseball stuff with Jim Bowden. Who cares? Boo. Boo is exactly right. We got something better for you folks. Not only do we have Dustin Ludke here of Dynasty Pros, my guy, a guy that I like having on because he has a very similar process to me. Not only that, but he has boots on the ground at the combine. You are in Indianapolis right now, Dustin. That's correct.
I am. The Colts Stadium is literally on the other side of my hotel room, and then right next door is the convention center where all the interviews are happening. So yeah, I was there yesterday. I'll be there today, tomorrow, the rest of the week. It's a good time.
Awesome. And you're always out there crushing it. I mean, is this your second one, or have you done a few?
My second one.
Second one. Yeah, nice, dude. I mean, like last year, having you be able to call into the show, pop in, super invaluable. On top of maybe the number one thing that you do for us, maybe my favorite thing. I think you already know what it is. You are like the pronunciation expert, and I am so bad with that I love having you available to clarify that stuff. And you put out a guide, right? That's on, that's up on your Twitter and stuff, right?
Yeah, it's so funny because it's just a resource that is out there that the NFL puts out. They just don't publicize it well. And I just like, well, let's get this out to people because we need to know. Like, we can't be pronouncing these guys' names wrong. Like, they're putting their bodies on the line to entertain us. The least we can do is like pronounce their names right.
Well, I'll tell you, dude, for the problem that I run into, especially, is if I go too long without being corrected, then it's just stuck. Like, and a certain players, like, I just kind of like mumble their name to get through it. Like, I swear for years, like with Alvin Kamara, I just say as fast as possible.
Yeah,
because like, is it Kamara? Is it Kamara? I just sneak it in there, dude. Because just I get into these bad habits, man. You can't change it. It's like when you read a book and then they make the movie and you're like, wait a second, it's Hermione. No, you know what I mean? Like, so I love that you come and help us with that. That's one of the biggest things. Everybody in the chat, thank you guys for popping in. Thanks for hanging out with us. Definitely hit that like and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. This is the deepest, darkest part of the offseason, but we got the combine here. So what we're going to do today, I want to go through some quick news and notes. We got to do it because we're only doing weekly shows really at this point. So we're just going to get you guys up to date on the important stuff. Then I want to ask Dustin about his process, just like we've been doing with all the guests lately, Jacob Sanderson, Jax Falcone, just kind of get an idea of what you do. And then typically what we've been doing is kind of looking at some players for Dynasty. But I mean, since you're there, let's just talk about what you expect to see. Yeah, talk rookies, talk it all. It's that time of year. So we're going to have you on the front end getting us ready. And then next week, Derek Brown's going to come on and talk about what happened. So I feel like we got a pretty good setup here. Right?
There you go.
All right. So in news, and again, some of this stuff not super relevant to fantasy, but we want to make sure people know what's going on. Chiefs franchise tag L'Jarius Sneed. Good move, Dustin, you think?
Yeah, I mean, how do you not want to have L'Jarius Sneed on your team? Like, he's a shutdown guy on the back end. You just need to have him.
Right. And then they kind of set it up that, Chris Jones kind of, if you're Chris Jones' agent, you kind of got to be doing the face palm a little bit. It's like, dude, don't tell them you're going to take it, that you want to stay and take a discount. Yeah. Right. Like, let's get the money and you can stay too. Right. But he already did that. So they're going to franchise tag L'Jarius Sneed and then negotiate with Chris Jones, which is smart. T Higgins tagged. People have been saying that they're going to tag and trade him, but I don't know that this isn't basketball, right?
No, I mean, I think there's still a possibility they could tag and trade him. Tagging him smart, right? You want to keep him. It lets you negotiate. They could trade him if they get a massive haul, but I don't think there's going to be an offer, especially with what I expect the wide receivers to do this weekend at the combine. I don't think there's going to be a market for T Higgins that's going to outweigh trading him.
Right. Yeah. So I'm with you on that. Jonnu Smith released. The Chiefs are releasing Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I don't know, man.
He's done. I mean, he'll still play, but he was never viable for fantasy to begin with. Now he's just probably done.
I mean, what's going to – I just don't see what the next step would be. He played with Aaron Rodgers, wasn't relevant. Played with Patrick Mahomes, wasn't particularly relevant. I mean, Peyton Manning going to come back? I mean, I just don't see how, if he can't be relevant with those guys, who is he going to be relevant with?
He could sign on if, let's say, the Colts, Alex Pierce gets hurt and they just need a burner to take the top off. He'll be that kind of role on a team. He'll sign midseason with a team that just has a huck it, chuck it type guy who can just air it out. I could see the Bills taking a stab at him just to kind of as a deep threat later in the season. Right?
Just be interesting. Okay.
Right. Gabe Davis is gone. So they just might need someone who runs out there and just runs go routes, all workout team, but he gets one or two passes a game and it makes the defense stay honest in the back end.
Emmanuel Sanders in that role, John Brown in that role, best ball, deep best ball. I think if you can land somewhere with a big arm, we go deep best ball.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah. Okay, cool. Demarcus Robinson back with the Rams, 1 year, $5 million. They like him. Solid player. Wide receiver 3, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in other news, and then we'll get to some rumors. Rumors can often be more fun than the news. I'll choose, as you know, Dustin. We've been talking about this stuff for a long time. That my policy is to accept all rumors as true until proven false. Yes, so it's more fun that way, right? If it's not true, well, come on out. You can come on the show, tell us it's not true. So we'll accept all rumors as true until proven false. But these are not rumors. These last couple things here, and this applies to what you got going on out there, man. I know it's disappointing for us. Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors won't run or test at the combine. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels also said they're not going to throw. Did I miss anybody? Is there anybody else that came out and said, I'm so good that I don't need to do any of these?
No, that's been it so far. I'd be surprised if I wouldn't be surprised if we see another guy today, tomorrow come out and say, yeah, I'm not going to run or I'm not going to do something. The issue with the top guys not doing it is their stock doesn't move. So all you can hope for is either join their tier, because you're never going to surpass them. So you have to join their tier. Now, if they were working out and they failed, then you could surpass them. You can't surpass them. So now it's, do I join their tier, or is there even a shot at me joining their tier? Am I just stuck in the tier 2 or tier 3? And then do I bother? But I still think they work out. The combine's an interesting beast. I don't know. I've had this talk this week. Like, is the combine what it is? And is combine still the best word for it? Like, does it need to be rebranded? Is it dying? What's happening with the combine? Because these top guys aren't working out anymore.
Right. It's annoying, man. And I'll tell you what, there's, as much as I like, my philosophy is I want these guys to compete. I want my competitors to compete. I want Bijan Robinson doing every single drill, even though he doesn't have to. I want Jay Cutler doing the bench press. Remember, he did the bench. Quarterbacks don't do it.
Don't do it. But he was like, screw it.
Dude, 23
reps, just like
23 reps too, which that's like tight end territory, dude. So that's what I want to see. But on the flip side, I get it, because like CJ Stroud does the S2 cognitive test, and now people, and you know what I mean, and he doesn't go 1. And then like Kyron Williams is another example of a guy who 40 times terrible, falls to like the 5th round, then turns out looks like that Kyron was pretty good, right? Yeah. So it makes you, if your agent, if you get burned by this, then the agent could turn around and say, okay, well, you know what? Like CJ Stroud's agent, he said, hey, you know what? I win. This was, this test is dumb. We're not doing it anymore. And then, they can avoid it. So I don't know. I would just rather see everybody do everything. That's my opinion.
I want to, I mean, as a fan, I want to see everybody do anything. I still want to see people compete, because I want to see it in that setting. Now, we can call it the underwear Olympics all you want, but throwing at the combine does matter to scouts and perception. Like, buzz at the combine can help your stock. Look at Anthony Richardson. Like, he was a late 1st round pick. Buzz the combine pro day, put him in the top 5.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, that's the thing. There's certain guys, and as Oit Boy here in the chat points out, great point, that this year for running backs, there's, that's gonna be the difference maker. And we'll talk about it later on the show. I feel a certain tier of tight ends, it's also for me going to be pretty crucial in separating who we want to take stabs on and who we don't. But before we get to that, let's get into some rumors real quick. Number one, people have been talking about Nick Chubb potentially getting cut. Now the Browns have been saying that they're going to try to avoid doing that. I've got a kind of a plan on what I think might happen. But I mean, if you were the Browns right now, they could save $11 million cutting Nick Chubb coming off a serious injury. I mean, what are your thoughts, man?
I think you're more likely to trade him. I think that's the running back market is pretty fluid right now. Like, we're going to have Barkley, Pollard out there. They're not getting tagged, which we'll get into. But I think you try to trade him. I don't think you can just outright cut him. He's too good to cut. You have to get something in return for him. Like, Jerome Ford can replace him on your team, but you can't just let something like that walk without getting something.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing my offseason series. What I would do with Chubb, if he were on board with it, right, is because he got hurt so early in the year, his numbers are so low and his snap totals are so low that you could do an incentive-based contract.
Yep.
And because the incentives are based on the previous year, he's not likely to earn them. It won't count against the cap this year. It's like you can kind of sneak by with that, right? So, but again, Chubb has to be on board with it, because if he's not healthy he had like 150 rushing yards, so you could actually set the incentive at like 200, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they'll go that way. Other running back news, franchise tags. We already know they said we're not going to tag Titans aren't going to tag Henry. Chargers aren't going to tag Eckler. Cowboys aren't going to tag Pollard. We heard that the Giants were going to tag Barkley, but then they came out at the combine and said, well, nothing's off the table just yet. So, Dustin, what's going on over there?
The Giants are in a hot mess, and this is the problem they put themselves in with tagging Barkley and then signing Daniel Jones to a large contract, and then having a poor season where they're drafting, I believe, 8.
Yeah, it's not like, that. It's okay. It's not.
Yeah, it's like 6 or 8. Like they're in there, like they could get a quarterback, but probably not.
No.
What do they do? Like it's too early to take a running back. They're just kind of in a tough situation. They worked it out where if they tag Saquon Barkley, it's not like the second-year tag, which costs like $1 bazillion. It's just like the first-year tag almost. Right. So they can work out. I just think it's bad business to say, hey, we tagged you this year. It's kind of seemed like a backroom deal of we won't tag you next year. And then to say, well, hey, we're not going to tag you. And now kind of go like, we tag you. And then, right, because that just sets you up for future players. Like, I don't want to go there. Like, I don't want to be in this situation where these owners are going to basically lie to me.
And I'll tell you what, man, at running back, more than any other position, it really is horrible the way it's panned out because the age apex is lower, right, for these guys, where with wide receivers, the age apex is like 27, 29 years old. You get those second contracts. It's like 20, 30 million bucks.
Yeah.
With the running backs, they keep picking up the fifth-year options and tagging them, and nobody gets the big contracts.
No.
And the tag is based on the top 5 contracts. So if nobody ever gets paid, then the number never goes up, right? It's like it's brutal. Like the second tag is supposed to be a huge jump. Like if you were to tag a wide receiver 2 years in a row, what would that be? Like 35, 40 million bucks?
Ridiculous.
It'd be ridiculous. For Saquon, they could do it for 12 million. That's not even that bad, you know.
No,
it's almost
really
like so. It's like it sucks, but that's how it's panned out. But you know, we'll have to see on that. I want to see Saquon go somewhere and be great because I think he's a great player. You know.
Yeah.
Other news here: Ryan Poles. This was interesting. Great question by the reporter who asked it. I don't know if you were around when this was asked. A reporter went to Ryan Poles at the combine and said, "Hey, do you think it would be fair to Justin Fields to not trade him before free agency if you plan to take a quarterback?" Great question, dude.
Yeah.
Put him on the spot. And Ryan Poles, yes, and Ryan Poles, he took the bait and he said, "You know what? I don't think it would be fair. We don't want him in a gray area." That all of us out here were like, all right, deadline, right? You know, March 11th or whatever it is. I'm sure it's not a hard and fast deadline, but I mean, what do you think, man?
It sounds to me from talking to GMs and other reporters around the combine that they're going to trade Justin Fields and they're going to draft Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
And it does sound like free agency is kind of their own internal deadline they've set themselves to trade him by because they want – if you wait into free agency, you start seeing guys get signed, Kirk Cousins, those guys, and the landing spots, there's less places for him to go.
Right.
So I think they're going to end up trading him soon. I don't think it'll happen this weekend. I think the deal will be in place. I don't think we hear until next week.
Yeah, awesome, man. Wendy, what's up in the chat? Mile High Luke, how we doing, guys? I know they're all big.
Wendy will be down here, I think, this weekend, so she'll be at the combine.
Oh, Wendy going down? So. Nice. You guys gonna link up on at least a picture, but if not,
yeah, we'll get a picture. I think she doesn't know yet, but I have plans to go out for ice cream one night, so you know we're all gonna pal around. So.
Yeah, and real quick before we go on the next thing, I wanted to give a quick shout out to my buddy Brad Starks and the Bourbon Bowl.
Nice.
Yeah, I've yet to win. If you win, you do get some bourbon. Howard Bender won one year, got a little bourbon, but I at least get to wear a shirt, dude. Shout out to Brad Starks. Shirt just came in the mail, so I had to throw it up there for him.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and the mistake I made was I showed my wife the shirt, and before and because like you get one for being in it, and her maiden name is Rose, and it's got the big rose on it.
That's awesome.
So now I had to go in and buy a full price another one for her. So now we have matching shirts, but we'll be twinsies for the Bourbon Bowl. So shout out to Bourbon Bowl. As far as remaining rumors, before we get to segment 2, let me know what any of these you think has some smoke. We got Dan Campbell at the combine saying Jameson Williams could be a full-time wide receiver. Raiders come out and said they don't plan to trade Devontae Adams. Raheem Morris basically said that he thinks the Falcons are very close to contention and he wouldn't be there if they had picked a better quarterback, which is pretty blunt. Pick one of those. Which one do you think is most interesting?
The Falcons one. They are linked the most highly to Justin Fields. I heard today that a lot of the betting sites pulled down Justin Fields' next team prop bets. They pulled those down, so you can't bet them anymore, which is a sign that maybe they think something is done. and they don't want people betting on it. So I think Atlanta is the most reasonable one. It's probably going to be a second round pick. There is a possibility that the Bears package Justin Fields and a second or a third and move and get 8 from Falcons. I don't think that's out of the question.
Then they would have 1, 8, and 9.
1, 8, and 9. I mean, if you're the Bears, wouldn't you do that? You trade Justin Fields and a second and maybe a fourth to get 8?
That would be crazy, bro. Because they could get, then you're in the market for like a Rome. I mean, like
Rome Odunze.
Think he'll be there
at 8.
Maybe.
Probably depends on how it goes. But you could, I mean, if he's not there, Joe Alt, the lineman's there. Like,
yeah,
I still think the Bears possibly trade out of 1 to 2. Because I think the Commanders are going to give them a haul. We can get into that later, but I think they can make multiple trades, and I think they come away with possibly 3 first-round picks this year.
Oh my God, that would be crazy.
They already have 2. They could pick up a third one somewhere.
I have been outspoken as not being a huge Ryan Poles fan in terms of like the minutia, right? But it's hard to say that his trading so far has worked out incredible for him. And of course, my big complaint with the Montez Sweat trade was that, like, they got him because they had a bad record, right? Like other teams also offered a second, but at the same time, he did the trade. He pulled the trigger. And there were a couple teams. The Cardinals were worse than them. The Cardinals, I think, had like 1 win. They could have got Montez Sweat if they wanted him, right? Yeah. So they did the trade, right? And then this trade, of course, the Panthers face planted, but I mean, hard to say it didn't work out, right? Because now they're in line to take the guy that was the guy the whole time. He was the guy that won the Heisman the year before, right? When they had the first pick. Right. Yes. So, I will put it this way. He's on my personal opinion hot seat. That's where I'm not going to say that I don't like him because you got to give these guys time. But as of right now, he's just had a number of moves I didn't love, Dustin.
I agree. I agree with what you said, last week or 2 weeks ago about like he's just made the moves that he was supposed to make. It's like none of them have been amazing. Right. My fear is now that he doesn't have the job security to make the moves he needs to make now. He's going to draft Caleb Williams because he doesn't have the job security to not draft Caleb Williams because that gives him the highest. Then that he wants to win football, but he also wants to keep his job. And drafting Caleb Williams gives him the highest percentage to keep his job.
Exactly. And if they stink again, then he can turn around and fire Matt Eberflus and get one more try. You know what?
If they're bad with Caleb Williams, you go, he's a rookie, you fire Eberflus.
And then you're good. Yeah.
Any other option, he's probably done, right?
Yeah.
If he trades the pick, personally, he could trade the pick and get a bunch of haul for next year, but he might not be around for next year, and he doesn't care.
He's got the shield. Yeah.
Yes. If he had job security, let's put it this way: Kyle Shanahan had job security that they could trade 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance and then trade him 2 years later. Like he had that job security; he can get by with that. Ryan Poles does not.
Well, that's what I honestly, and again, let's get into the next segment. But that's why I worry about for Brock Purdy is that like they love Shanahan. The GM over there is he's not going anywhere.
John Lynch isn't going. Yeah,
John Lynch isn't going anywhere. So like when push comes to shove, and one of the big 3, you got the 3-headed dragon. Yep. When it's time to cut off a head, I don't know, dude.
You cut off that wonky one, and then it's like,
it's Brock Purdy might be the wonky one, dude. So I don't know, But at the same time, he's going. There's nothing to worry about at this moment because he's playing well. All right, let's get into segment 2. This is my favorite part of it because we got all these dynasty leagues, all these things going on. I like to ask my guests like, what are some tricks of yours? And first and foremost, just get in the mindset of where you're at right now, because the calendar for all of us is all over the place. I've talked about this on the show. Some people are doing college all year round. They're doing Devy leagues. They're doing campus to can. Some people like myself, like I'm doing free agency articles right now. Yeah. So great news with having you on is I can ask you what to look for this weekend, which we're going to do, and then I'll catch up. That's how I catch up is I kind of cheat. I have you on the show. We have Derek Brown on the show, and I just say, hey, what do you think? Right. It's great. So what's your calendar like? Let's say Super Bowl hits. What's next for Dustin?
Next, I started looking at pathways to opportunities. So I like you, I look at free agency. Obviously I have to do some rookie work. I don't do college. I don't do Devy or C2C leagues. I start tiering players right now. So what I've done the past couple weeks is just tier them. So these are my tier 1 quarterbacks. These are my tier 2 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receiver, tight ends down the line. And then I wait to see what happens at Combine and Pro Days over the next basically month and see where that breaks out. So currently I have 6 quarterbacks in my tier 1. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, J.D. McCarthy, Michael Penix. Do I all think they're going to be tier 1 at the end of the day? No. I think what happens is that tier is going to get split in half based on pro day performances, combine performances. The problem is with Caleb and Jaden not working out, they're stuck in tier 1. So it's a matter of there's 3 guys in tier 1 or 4 guys, and I think 2 guys will drop out. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm just tiering guys. I'm not going to split hairs on is Caleb Williams so much better than Jalen. Like, who cares? Like, they're there. Landing spot's going to matter down the road.
And I love that approach, man, because it's so much easier to, in my opinion, and I got to do this with tight ends in the offseason too with my rankings, is I take the big ball of clay, and it's so much easier to cut parts of it away as like, so you got all these guys, and right, like, and then let's say the Cowboys go out and get a big wide receiver too, right? Then I can just cut Jake Ferguson away.
And
but it's so
put him down.
You put them away, but it's so much harder to take guys that you've already cut and stick them back in there, like in your mind. So I love that approach where it's like, okay, let's consider everyone. And then as we get reasons to remove them, for instance, one of these guys falling into the 3rd round of the draft, right? Then you cut them away, dude. So I love that setup. And do you post those in an article or on your Twitter?
I tweeted them out the other day. I know it was coming out the combine. Like, here's my tiers.
Good.
It's just, there's pieces to the puzzle for each player. We can look at, I say this, there's 4 things we need to know about the players: mental, heart, physical, and opportunities. We can look at their physical stats. We can look at what they did in college. We can see their production. Now we're going to start seeing their measurables and their 40 times and all that kind of stuff. So we look at that physical and we know what it is. And they could be physically gifted. We got to start looking at the mental and the heart for the game. Right. So last year I fell in love with Roshan Johnson, Zay Jones, because they had the passion for the game. You could see it when you talk to them. They had the mental capacity for the game. That's all fine and well, but until they get the opportunities they're given, it doesn't matter. Because we've seen guys, Jamarcus Russell, physically gifted, got the opportunities, but didn't have the passion, didn't have the mental, flamed out. We've seen guys, Josh Rosen, had the passion for the game, had the physical abilities, had the mental capacity, didn't get the opportunities, flamed out. Yeah. So you have to have all 4. And when we see all 4 come in unison together, that's where we see these guys like Brock Purdy, who, when he got the opportunity, all the other 3 were there, and it lined up. And the physical doesn't have to be necessarily the greatest thing. It's what leads them to be the best case of who they are, the best, what gets them to their ceiling the fastest. And so that's why I'm just tiering guys, and then I'll move guys down. Last year it was tight ends: Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave are all my 4 tier 1 guys post-combine. Like, they all tested well, production.
Darnell got cut out of there at the combine, right?
Yeah, like, he was like, okay, he's big, but but then it was, I knew that whoever went to Detroit was going to be the best landing spot. Yes. Obviously, Sam Porter were there, like, loved him. I still like Michael Mayer as like I like the other 3 as long-term guys, but I knew that was the thing. JSN. Yeah, you knew Kincaid
wouldn't hit his true ceiling just yet, which, I was really in on Kincaid. Obviously, he had the most catches of Bill's tight ends ever had, but he didn't hit the ceiling that a Laporta did, because you were right. The Dawson Knox was still heavily involved. I thought he was going to be more in line, but you know what? They split the role. So
the games where they played together, like, I think it was games when Knox and Kincaid played, there was 3 games where one of them was an outlier, more than 2 points more. Twice it was Kincaid, once it was Knox. So in the games they played, they basically split the work. Right. But same thing last year. We loved JSN as the top wide receiver, but opportunity wasn't really there for him this year. Now everything else, the hope for the lines up, maybe Lockett's gone. So that's why I'm just tiering guys right now and let the pro days and combine kind of sift and winnow those tiers of, okay, maybe this guy goes from tier 1 to tier 2, or maybe my tier 1 gets split and that just moves everything else down. And then landing spot will matter. Fit matters to me a lot more.
Right. And that's a huge advantage in Dynasty. And why I always love talking to you this time of year. And, there are some things that it's very tough. It's very tough to report on certain things like that because a lot of it is feeling, right? Like, it's tough for you to come out and say, hey, I talked to this guy today and I don't think he's that sharp. You know what I mean? Like, because it's offensive to a certain degree. And I'll ask you, say, hey, which one of these guys is stupid? But you can't just go on. You're not going to go on social media and say things like that.
And bash a guy.
Exactly. So and it translates in your rankings because you're very respectful, but
I try to be.
There's a big part of it. Yeah, you're as respectful as you need to be. There's but the thing is, there's a big part of scouting, and Greg Gabriel, of a legendary scout from he was head scout for the Bears for a long time. He basically said he's like, we got plenty of guys that can watch football on the TV, right? Like, we got plenty of guys that can look at the stats. The most important thing to me is the people that have the boots on the ground and actually go to these schools and talk to these people and talk to the people around them and find out what kind of person they are. Now, Greg Gabriel inevitably got murdered by Bears fans because he when Antonio Brown went crazy, he came out and said, "Oh, see, I told you guys he was crazy. That's why he slid to the 6th round." Everyone knew he was crazy. To which Bears fans said, "Wait a second, you knew Antonio Brown was good and you didn't draft him, right?" But besides the point, to your point, it is super important to get that extra part, and that's why it's great to have you out there on the ground, and we're going to be sticking with you through the combine as you go to these interviews and stuff. Make sure everybody you're following him on Twitter. It's the Dunnit 13. That's DUNIT. The Dunnit 13.
And reading people is hard, right? Like, and I'll say this: I get to interview some of these guys for 2-3 minutes. That's it. I'm getting like 1% of time compared to what a team gets with them. But reading people is a trait that people have or they don't have, right? There's a reason why that girl from high school, has dated 3 different guys that have all cheated on because she just doesn't pick the right guy. There's a reason why your buddy owns a business and he's constantly hiring people because he hires someone, they quit a week later because they can't read people well. It's just not a skill they have.
And you got to be careful too on the flip side, because Belichick, we've seen, these reports coming out that he didn't draft Deebo Samuel and AJ Brown because they were having too much fun on their visit. Yeah. And instead he drafted N'Keal Harry. Turns out football can be fun. It's okay to have fun, right? This isn't Remember the Titans. So, to some degree, you got to separate that. You got to separate the guys because, you're looking for guys that you think really can't get it. Like Tavon Austin, after his rookie year, came out and said the playbook looked like Spanish to me, which is something you should never say to reporters, right? No. But we're trying to avoid some of those guys. So why don't we get into some talk, honestly, on this combine? Like, can you just give us a rundown? And this is cool because I've never been. I want to go. Matt Deutsch, Howard Bender. Next year, how about I'm there? Me and Dustin are in the same room doing this shit.
Hey, we get a little Radio Row spot, maybe. We can.
I'm saying, dude,
we could get all kinds. I mean, Radio Row is hopping. Prospects, coaches are in there. General managers, like we could really hook it up. Fantasy Alarm. Let's make it happen.
Fantasy Alarm. Let's make it happen, dude. Let's get as many boots on the ground as possible. But tell us what you've done so far and what's next, and what's some of your first. Just give us a schedule first.
So schedule is. So they tier it. So coaches and GMs are, today is what, Wednesday or Tuesday, Wednesday. Wednesday was also, today was linebackers and defensive line interviews. So players interview one day with the media and then work out the next day. So defensive linemen, linebackers interview today, work out tomorrow. Tomorrow is DBs for interviews. And then they work out the following day. Then Friday will be interviews with quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs.
Yeah.
Tight ends, I believe, are interviews on Thursday. They'll work out Friday with the DBs. And then Saturday at 1:00, QBs, wide receivers, running backs work out. In between them, there's also some other events. So yesterday we did press conferences with GMs and coaches. I actually got to go cover a woman in football event. So this is why I think the combine needs to be rebranded. So much more happens. They had this women in football event where they had 12 current coaches, female coaches in the NFL, talk to a symposium of 40 women who also want to get into the coaching sphere. So it's an event they've been doing it for 8 years. It was a cool thing. So they talked about, it's a 2-day event where they get to interview people. They get time with each team, people from who coach in college and high school who want to become NFL coaches on some level, women who want to become coaches. So they had female coaches talk about their experience. Then they actually brought up 4 coaches. It was Ron Rivera, Todd Bowles, Kevin Stefanski, and John Harbaugh, and they talked about their process, like how they built that culture of accepting women as coaches, like how they changed their minds, how they kind of built that culture. So this is what the combine is. It's not just guys working out and doing medicals. There's so much of. There's a player union meeting.
Sorry to interrupt, but was Jennifer King there for the women coaches? She's the new running backs coach for the Bears.
She might have been. There was a lot of. There was 12 of them, but it was cool just to listen to them talk about how they've grown and right in the experience of getting fired from one team, but also getting hired from a new team, and it shows like you're still valuable. It's not just one person taking a shot. Like you belong, and their saying has always been the future of football. Now their new saying is the future is now. Like they are growing, and they have 40 women there that are trying to get coaching jobs, and they had I think 40 last year, and they said I think 5 or 6 of them came out of last year and got jobs. So it's just cool. And there's down the hall was another like NFLPA meeting where they were talking about player engagement. So there's so much more that happens at the combine besides what we see as fans of workouts. So it's just been kind of like introducing to people, talking to people. My favorite thing is talking to other scouts and reporters and all these other like NFL reporters who you just maybe don't know, who cover teams more intimately, kind of get their like pick their brains on things, running into coaches in the hallway and say, "Hey, can I ask you 2 questions?" Like it's so much more chaotic than you think, but it's also more intimate than you think, which is really cool.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I got to get out there, dude. That's so cool. Yeah, and I'll tell you, like with the female coaches, like that. The reality is, like people are finally figuring out that you don't have to play football to have a great understanding for the game, right? Yeah. And not to mention, there's now a lot more ways that women can play with, like the flag football is getting crazy, and like and then even
semi-pro teams,
tackle football and semi-pro. But like you look at like Jonathan Gannon, and it's like what's the difference, right? Like that dude, what level of football do you think Jonathan Gannon played? Like probably Pop Warner, maybe. You know what I mean? Like some of these guys, like you don't have to. And the reality is that when you go through, there probably are a lot of women out there that are just sharper than the lowest tier of coaches we have now. So why not give these women shots? And it's panning out big time for the people that are taking those risks, man. So
yeah, and John Harbaugh they all talked about that. The players don't care. The players just want whoever's going to help them be best on the field and succeed. Right. So John Harbaugh talked about they have a person who does like their defensive line. She's their defensive line coach or assistant, and she basically breaks down like their get offs and their signal calls and their scouting reports, and she breaks it down in such a way that it's easy for them to understand. It's quicker than it was last year. Like this is the first year. So like he basically said she's the best they've ever had to it. And he's been with the Ravens for a long time. So just seeing like, it's not a matter of gender. It's a matter of skill, and whoever that is, that's what they need to hire. They all talked about like, we just want to hire the best coaches to help us win. We're here to win games. Whoever's going to help us do that best, we're going to do it. So they had input from analytics department, strength and conditioning, positional coaches. It was just cool to see them, young, old, just diversity in general. It was really cool to see that. But that's what the combine is. It's so much more than workouts. It's so much more than interviews and team meetings. It's all these other events that the NFL puts on. They don't often talk about.
See that, and that's a beautiful thing, man. So okay, so you've got those events. As far as the interviews go, like is it just they put the player up on the podium and you guys are all in one room and take turns asking questions? Is that kind of how that goes?
It is organized chaos. It is 8 podiums, like literally podium. Guy comes up and it's whoever can shout the loudest to get their question in. Like whoever captures their attention. And it's
who's the loudest?
Whoever's loudest, whoever wants to.
Well, I was going to say who's generally the loudest out there. Is it Sawhook?
Sawhook was here last year and he did all right. There's guys out here who they want to ask their questions. So I could ask, hey, Coop, what teams have you met with? And you'll rattle off all your teams. But then the Bears guy is going to go, hey, did you meet with the Bears? Because that's his question. That's his soundbite. Right. So it's just one of those things. So I a lot of times will sit back and record and watch and listen. And then when I catch something, then I'll tweet it out, or then I'll wait till like the crowd dies down. So they're there for 50 minutes. A lot of times you can go over after the fact and get like 5-6 questions because everyone has dealt with player A and they've moved on and they just kind of bounce around. So it's okay. I'm here with Tristan for Dynasty Nerds. We have a good plan of like, hey, you're going to take these guys. If you want to get in the Caleb Williams ones, you have to like stake out your spot early and get there and like fight your way up to the front like it's a mosh pit. It is just organized chaos, but they are walking around as well. So you'll just see you guys walk through the hallway and you're like, oh, this guy, that's running back 10. Who's that? And so I have like cheat sheets like, oh, that's so-and-so. That's Braylon Allen. Okay, cool. And you can catch them that way as they're trying to go. And they've got runners. So if you can make friends with the runners of the NFL, who are obviously like college kids usually, I've met a couple of them like, hey, who are you with? They're like, oh, I'll be with this guy tomorrow. I'm like, hey, do you think you can sneak him over here for a couple questions? Like, yeah, sure.
Oh, that's smart.
So it's stuff like that. It's
guiding people around, right?
The people who are like, hey, you got to go here next. And here's the thing, in the room, it's podiums, cameras, and then it's NFL Live, it's PFF, it's Sirius. Like they're all in the same room, and people are just setting up shop. Like here's a camera, lights, and they're just recording. I'm like walking behind them. So I talked to Matthew Berry yesterday. Like he was standing next to us at a press conference. We're like, oh hey, and we're like, hey, just we want to say hi. Thank you for everything you've done for fantasy. Like it's intimate because those guys are there and they're not big timing you, but it's also just chaos.
Exactly. Yeah. Plus, not to mention, like we don't necessarily need you in there, for the Caleb Williams interview.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of different flavors of reporters there, and that's going to be swamped. Where we need you as a dynasty guy is in with some of those deep cut guys, right? That like might not be, the beat writers for the Patriots, like Evan Lazar and those guys. They might not be all over a guy that is fringe third, fourth, fifth round wide receiver, but we need to know what's going on. Those are the guys we need the info the most on. So like,
and there's not There's not a lot of fantasy focused people here either. So I try to bridge the gap between fantasy and NFL. But there's a lot of just straight NFL guys here who are like, exactly. I'm a beat reporter for this team, or I write for Patriots.com, or the Musket Fire, or whatever it's called. And so it's those guys, but there's not a lot of fantasy guys. So talking to Matthew Berry, he was like, yeah, there's not a lot of fantasy people here. It's like, yeah, there's just not.
Dude, might have to steal that name, the Musket Fire, for a Patriots.
I think there is isn't that a Musket Fire, but I think that's one of them.
Maybe, but I don't know. That's if there isn't, there needs to be.
There needs to be
a Musket Fire. Okay, so give us a couple guys then that obviously you mentioned like Caleb Williams, Drake May. What quarterback that's kind of, and I'll take not Jaden Daniels either. Give me a quarterback that's from the next group down that you think could make big moves that you're excited to see.
I mean, I'm excited for Michael Penix. He's in my tier 1. I think what I saw from him on the field last year shows me that he can start. Now, he's a little older, doesn't have necessarily the hype that the other guy have, but I think if he has a good combine, he could join that tier with the top 3. And then, surprisingly, Joe Milton could be a sneaky play.
He's the monster arm guy, right?
Dude, monster arm.
I've looked at, I've seen some clips. I haven't done like my full deep dive, but I hope he's doing the drills, right? That's
it's just a matter if he can show the touch and the finesse on those other routes. The issue with those is they're running with the wide receivers, and they just get like, the way it is like, all right, QB1, you get the first 3 wide receivers, so you don't know who, like, he could get matched up with low end wide receivers or high, like you just don't know. And same thing with wide receivers. Last year, I want to say it was Zay Flowers, like, was getting balls from like Taylor Bagent. Like, it wasn't like the secret Bagent man throw. It's not like he's getting CJ Stroud balls. And I think we finally saw one. And we're like, oh, that's the connection we wanted. So it's just a matter of like luck of the draw.
I hope he gets somebody fast so he can show off that. I mean,
those 9 months, that's the funnest thing to watch, because and I think he's just going to chuck it. If I was one of those quarterbacks and I had an arm like that, the last one I would just, what do you mean? I would just try to chuck it into the stands across.
I've heard, for real though, because I've heard so many funny descriptions of this guy's arm. Somebody said, I think it might have been Derek Brown of the Fantasy Pros pod. I think he said something like he could throw a strawberry through a battleship.
I heard today we were talking about someone. They said he could throw the ball through a car wash without it getting wet.
I heard that too. That's a good one. I hear that's an old baseball one. That's an old baseball one.
So I think Joe Milton could press. I don't think he's a starter in the NFL, but I could see him going to a team that maybe needs a starter in 2 years and maybe just see what he does. And maybe he gets. We've seen plenty of backups get jobs and get opportunities. So he could go to a team and be a backup and then get opportunity.
Okay. What's another? You got a deep cut. So running back this year, there's like not a consensus on the top, and a lot of the mock drafts I see, especially the Superflex ones, don't even have a single running back going in the first round. So like, are there any RBs, even the top group or even later on that you're excited to see?
I've looked at probably 15 like top 5 running backs, and I think I've seen 20 names. Like it's just not even close to being consensus. So I interviewed Dylan Lobby from New Hampshire last week.
UNH, baby, Wildcat. That's where my wife and my sister both went.
I tell you, I love that guy. Like, he was so down to earth. I asked him the question. I said, if the coach lets you call one play, what would it be and why? And he broke it down. He's like, it's base 60, blah, blah, split this. And like, he's like, but this is what this means. And this is what happens. And basically it was a route that he goes out, he starts the backfield, goes out, finds out if it's man or zone. If it's man, he's running one route. If it's zone, it's another. And then but the way he broke it down was so simple, but like he also understood the game. Like, if it's zone, I'm running this because this, and if it's man, I'm running this because I know I can beat it with speed.
That's a great answer, dude.
Yeah, he's in my tier 2 because I enjoy he's fast. He's a Christian McCaffrey light. He's got speed. He's got the pass catching ability, but he also is, I think, big enough that I think he can handle the workload. I also kind of like Will Shipley a little bit. Like, we'll see how he does.
I want to say on the Dylan is Labe, right?
Yeah, Lobby.
Lobby. Okay, my favorite play in high school was just like that, where it was if it's man, it's like we run a slant with an out, and if it was man, it would just be the slant and the out. But if it was zone, it would turn into an out and up. Okay, and that was my favorite play, where they run with this guy and then hit the out and up. That was my favorite play. So me and I think I'll get along well with this Lobby fella.
Yeah, I mean, New England guy, like he's from Long Island, like played New Hampshire, like sounded like every Boston person I've ever talked to, like just had that accent, like, and he's just a fun guy. Like, I asked him who was going to take over, like who's going to steal the show at his draft party. He said his dad, who looks like Vin Diesel. Like,
Yes.
He was just a fun guy. I mean, he was the star of the Senior Bowl. Like he's out there. So he's a guy that could rise up. I think he could be a day 2 pick for a team. And he
I'll
could be the pass catching back. Like obviously he's white, so he gets compared to Danny Woodhead and Christian McCaffrey, but like I think he's more Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara.
I'll give him this. Since he's a running back, if he were to go even in the 4th round, and we'll give him the 4th round comp picks too. If he's in there, then we'll take him late with our dynasty leagues, right? You know,
I think he should be. Yeah, take him at 3rd, 4th round, depending on where landing spot. I think that's a reasonable because he just has the speed. Speed will get you on the field at somewhere. Like he returned punts and kicks. Like he can still do that for you. I just think his speed and like even if he goes to a team that's used them maybe as a gadget to start, and then maybe he takes off next year.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. So, who are some players then that? Because this is the whole reason I wanted to get you on here is that I want to know what to look for. Because like with a lot of these players, some of them we know what they're going to do, some of them we don't. Who am I looking for when they're up to do the drills and do the combine? We say, okay, if this guy does this, if this guy does well here, then he could go way up. Like who are some names?
So first, let's look at wide receiver. Troy Franklin has a potential to get into that tier 1 with Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, and Adunze. Like if he does well, he just has to do okay. Like he doesn't have to be like a burner. He just has to not suck.
Okay.
And I think he moves up there. I also feel that Xavier Worthy, if he runs slow,
that would be because like, he's tall, but he's very skinny, right?
Yes, and he's built on speed. And if he runs slow, I think he's going to fall, and he might end up being just a drop. Like people have him possibly moving up there. I just think they're the 2 biggest movers in wide receiver in terms of up and down that we could see because I just wonder what they're going to do. And then I'm looking at JJ McCarthy for quarterbacks. Could be the 3rd best quarterback. Maybe not. Like he didn't do a ton in college, wasn't asked to do a ton. Right. So I think he needs to come out and have a good combine, throw well, and kind of get some buzz behind his name to really jump up there. They're talking like he could go to Denver at 12. Yeah. And some people are like, oh, great. Some people are like, he's a 2nd round pick. So he needs to impress this weekend to really boost his stock up.
That's so when I see like a lot of the mocks have the Patriots taking a QB at 3. The ones that don't have the Patriots taking a QB at 3 now. They're talks about trading back up to get JJ McCarthy or taking Spencer Rattler, so I want to see this guy do well because I mean he's a winner, and it's hard again with Harbaugh. Like a lot of these guys when they played for Harbaugh, they didn't have gaudy numbers because he's like a defensive ground and pound kind of
he's
slow,
a runner.
Right? Like you look at
run first offense,
like Nico Collins in college. He didn't do anything. He had nothing for college stats, right? But look at him now. We just had a crazy breakout year. So that's the whole thing with college is tough, and that's why this is important. With Xavier Worthy, because I've been doing a little looking around with a guy like that. Like obviously, there's like been the Devonta Smith comparisons because he as well was very skinny, but still 6'1", right? Yeah. My question on a player like this: how much to you do drops matter? Like if you're seeing a guy that like him, at times some pretty bad drops, right?
Yeah, in college it matters more. Like combine, I don't care because it could be a bad ball. It depends on what the drop looks like. That's where drops and interceptions, I feel like we need to score them like baseball does with errors. Like we need to assign it to someone because it's not necessarily always their fault.
Right. Yeah, it's
like
for real.
Interception is not always a quarterback's fault. Drops are not always a wide receiver's fault. It's a bad thrown ball. It's zipped in there when it should have been touched in there. Like they're not all equal. So I think we need to find a way of assigning them to blame to someone like they do in baseball with errors.
You can assign, with the interceptions, it's like, ball bounces off Evan Ingram's hands, gets picked, or
that's Ingram's fault.
It's like, but it never gets assigned to him. And like you say, and also somebody misses a block and the quarterback, we had an arm getting hit. That's not the wide receiver's fault. That's not the quarterback's fault. Right. Yeah, so maybe there should be some sort of assignment like that. And again, I guess what I would want to see is because I did, watch some highlights or whatever in low lights, you got to watch it all. Yeah. And I did see a little bit of, because usually I don't care about drops, honestly. Personally, for the most part, I don't. Like if they're good enough in practice to get on the field on Sunday, then I don't care. Jimmy Graham dropped like 20 balls once from Drew Brees. Like I don't care, but there are some times where you watch the way a guy catches and they're going like this, you know what I mean? Or they're
Yeah.
doing like one of these off the helmet instead of going and getting it. So that I do watch for that a little bit.
It does matter. Right. Or they're dropping it because they see the guy coming, they don't want to take the hit, and they're just like alligator arming it. Like that shows like a lack of commitment and passion. Like it's a business decision on that. And like that matters, right? If you have bad form, we can coach that out of you. If you are avoiding contact, that's something we can't really coach out of you.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I do like that drill where they have them run across the field and they have to catch like 5 balls from, different
on back and forth. And so that's an interesting drill to watch live because most of them run it. You almost have to run it at half speed because there's just not enough time to catch and turn if you're running full speed. But what you'll see is some guys will just guide a ball through and they don't catch it. They just pass it.
They don't even,
they just touch the ball and push it through. Where some guys, so Zay Flowers last year ran it at full speed, and guys were like, I think he missed a ball because he was just like passing. The guy's like, you already have you have 2 balls in your you have a ball he just was too fast. So it depends on how they do that, and that's what that drill is for. But they need to spread it out. It's not done well.
Yeah, I just like to see whether the ball comes in high. I want to see them here.
Yep.
And not here, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like just there, that level of
that technique and form.
The form and the technique, and there's that little extra something that spatial awareness and the dexterity, right? Like those again. That's why you got to be out there. The other drill that I love, it's not even a fantasy football one, but the one with the defensive players where they put the towels down and you got to like pick up the towel.
Pick up the towels, yeah.
Dude, that one is because some guys are amazing at that, and then you're like, wow, this guy could really come around the edge. But they make the big boys do it too, and some of them they're like, you can see them getting up there. They're like, all right, I'm a nose tackle, but I'll try
my best.
I'll try my best. And that is that. I mean, it's fun. And some of those guys can fly through that. But those little things. What are some other drills you really like?
I enjoy watching the quarterbacks when they're trying to throw it, like they do a speed test basically. And they just chuck the ball into this mat, and it's so loud because they're like probably 10 yards from it, and they just bam. And they can tell, like Will Levis last year, like you can tell he was like, I just want to rip this. Like I want to throw it through the towel. Obviously the go routes are super fun. Just because I think the wide receivers, that's the only, you're not supposed to cheer. So if you come to the combine, I want to say it's boring, but there's no noise. They don't broadcast anything. You actually have to listen to it on your headphones. You're listening to Daniel Jeremiah on NFL, through the app, and then you're not supposed to cheer. So they'll cheer when like an Iowa guy gets up.
I hear him cheering for the Boilermakers.
Yeah,
when the Purdue guys on TV, they cheer for the Purdue guys 100%.
But the go routes, people will cheer. Like it's just so fun to see a guy run 40 yards and catch this beautiful pass. Those are fun. I'll tell you with the running back, someone like the cutting drills is interesting because that camera angle, they get you behind it. So like I'm looking at the way how off center they get from their center mass. Like Zach Charbonnet for me got too far over his hips and he's so broad. Like if you're tilting too much and you get clipped, you're going to go down because you just don't have a good center of gravity. So watching that is something I like to look at and just actually like draw on the screen. Like I pause it and like it's a 45-degree angle. He's getting too far over his hips that he's off balance now. Like his center of gravity is shifted too high. So those are interesting drills just like if you're evaluating players, but they're fun to watch. Like the passing, obviously you can't not like the pass catching drills. They're just fun to watch.
Yeah. It is huge for contact balance. And I think that, people pointed out with Ronald Jones, he ran too upright and turns out that Ronald Jones runs a little too upright. You know what I mean? Like it's not something
they can run too straight, but they can also get too bent.
Too forward too. Yeah.
It's not forward, it's side to side more than anything. When they're cutting, it's just because they get too Zach Charbonnet to me got too
over his skis.
His skis, yeah. And he was just you can tell like if there's linemen on either side of you and you get clipped, you're going down because you're not over your you're too far over your skis.
Well, you could see it last year with Bijan, man, because it was night and day, him getting up there after another guy and he was perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting, man. All right. Before we get you out of here, what's in your opinion, the most underrated part of the combine, right? Like actually, you know what? Let me ask you first, what's the most overrated part? Let's go negative first, get that out of the way. What's the most overrated
the most overrated part is basic 40 times.
No, I love 40 times.
They're fun, but they mean nothing.
I know.
Now, Zebra Technologies is putting like the chips in the pad. They have the Senior Bowl that tracks like real-time speeds. That's why it gets called the Underwear Olympics. You're like, oh, they ran a 4.4 in basically nothing. What are they with? But I like to look at a weight adjusted 40 times and 10-yard splits because that's what matters for the NFL. Like, how fast can they get off 10 yards off the ball? And then what's their weight adjusted 40? And that's where you can look at guys and go, okay, he's better. Look at Tank Bigsby. His 40 time was the same as his weight adjusted 40. So like he was slow comparative. So basic 40 times me are the most overrated part because yes, it's exciting, but it doesn't really give us a good glimpse. So you got to look at the weight adjusted 40, their 10-yard splits.
Yeah, for the thing about 40 time is that it is meaningful for very specific situations.
Yes.
But in your fantasy leagues, that only matters. That's only like icing, and it's basically breakaway. Like it's basically the guys that can turn what would be a 30-yard play for some guys into a 70-yard play, right?
Yep.
And
exactly.
To me, that does matter at one specific position, which is tight end. And we've seen the difference between George Kittle, who runs a 4.52, and Zach Ertz or Hunter Henry, who run like a 4.74, is the fact that George Kittle has touchdowns he has like 4 touchdowns that are 70 plus yards, right? He has no tight end since he's come in the league, no tight end has more 40 plus yard plays. And that's because he has a speed, right? That's why a rookie, that's why Jake Ferguson this year, and not to bash on Jake Ferguson for the second time, but that's why Jake Ferguson could have 71 catches and have like 700 yards, whereas Kyle Pitts as a rookie had 68 catches, but he had 1,000 yards. It's because he's fast. So, and I think that for me, once you get past, because obviously Brock Bowers, super mega star. Do you have Jatavian Sanders in a tier of his own next, or use it kind of
No, I have Jatavian Sanders, Ben Sinnott, Cade Stover, and Jaheim Bell all in the tier 2.
Yeah. Okay. Currently. So, and Jaheim Bell, I'm gonna kind of put aside because he's to me, like he's basically just a big wide receiver that is tight end eligible, which I love, right? And
we love for fantasy, especially because dual eligibility. Who knows?
See if you, dude, ask Johnny Wilson if he's willing to play tight end. If you can ask one question for me, if you can ask one player one question for me, ask Johnny Wilson, say if a team asked you to convert to tight end, what would you consider it?
All right, I wrote it down.
All right, thank you. Yeah, Johnny Wilson, that's the guy because he's like 6'7", dude, or 6'6", 6'7". He's a big boy, dude. He's like 235, 240. Like that's one guy for me. Tell him your buddy Coop is begging you to convert to tight end.
The tight end whisperer wants you to convert.
That's right, dude. But there is a big group of guys, and you named a few of them, especially like Ben Sinnott. Like did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay. If he could be the next Cameron Brate if he doesn't have enough speed and just kind of or Kylan Granson or Anthony Ferguson as like a part-time guy, or if he's athletic enough and good enough, now gets a shot like Mike Gesicki got a shot to be a slot guy that plays. I mean, how do we get an Evan Ingram, right? Because Evan Ingram's not that big, right? So there's a whole group there where I think the speed is going to matter especially if they're going to be part-time guys. The speed's going to matter. So excited. I'm sad that it is overrated though. You're 100% right. Dude.
It is.
Right. But
and with technology, especially with technology now that we can track their speeds with pads on in games that Zebra technology does, and AWS is using, like we don't need 40 times as much.
I know. I hate when they say it. Like Sean McVay's kind of said it. The 49ers, they said that's how they found Brandon Ayuk, the GPS stuff, right? The GPS speed too. I don't know, man. I like the 40. And the other thing with the 40 time.
Fun.
Yeah, and the other part is that you got guys like Devon Achane, and of course he is good, but he also did track his entire life, and he did track in college. This guy's got his own spikes, right? He knows exactly how to get up. You know what I mean? Like
that start is so important. And
the start is everything.
I talked to a guy who runs a training school in Florida, and he said I get 10 guys. He goes, and he ran track in college, and we were talking, just walking back to my car the other day, and he said that's what we work on the most is the start. He goes, because that'll make or break you.
It's not fair. Yeah, exactly. Like these guys, it isn't fair. And
but also like why are we making them do a track start? Can't we just like have them like line up like a running back, like a wide receiver, and just start from there? Like
because the same reason everything dumb is done, Dustin. The answer is always because that's the way it's always been done.
The way it's always done.
Yeah, 100. That's the number. I hate that, but that is why things never change because that's the way it's always been done. Okay, well, let's get you out with one last question then. What is the most underrated part of the combine?
The buzz in the room around players is the best part of the combine, whether that's in the interview rooms, whether that's in the stadium, when something happens and you can hear other people talking about it. So Anthony Richardson last year, there was just a buzz when he worked out. After he worked out, you could hear other people talking about him. The same thing with Zay Flowers, Andre Yosevich. Like there was a buzz, there was a noticeable buzz that you're hearing the names and conversations of other people are having. Ooh. And that's what's important. You hear that because that builds, that starts to go. And so last year, Anthony Richardson, they were doing the go routes. And the way it works is if a wide receiver drops it, they have an option for a second round. But the quarterbacks is just like whoever wants to throw. And it didn't look like he was going to. And everyone's like, you could just feel the anticipation in the dome of like, is he going to throw? Is he going to throw? Is he going to throw? And then all of a sudden he was like, yep. He was like, fine. You could just see he knew everybody wanted. It was like, fine, I'll do it. And he chucked it. And everyone, like, the buzz around that was just like, he did it. He appeased fans. Like, the buzz in the room and the buzz in Indianapolis on players is the most underrated part, because the buzz you hear about players and going to teams matters. The buzz you hear from fans matters. Like, that all matters into a player's projections going forward. So that's the underrated part that we don't talk about enough.
I love that, dude. I love it, man. And please let us know on Twitter. We'll be following you, the Dunit 13,
Yep.
DUNIT. Folks out there, if you want to take advantage of the buzz yourself and everything going on this weekend and the hype, you can get in on Dynasty, which is what we've been talking about. We've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. We'll be talking about it up until the draft, and then, we'll be doing a little bit of Dynasty stuff, and then we get into best ball. But if you want to get involved, go to myffpc.com, use promo code COOP now. They'll give you $25 when you deposit 35 or more if you're a first-time depositor. And this is where you can get involved in this. There's two ways, really. You can do a startup draft, which is starting from blank and drafting players, including the rookies this year, even before the draft, if you have a hunch, like our buddy Dunny here. Everything's in the show description. If you want to click the show description now and go check that out, use promo code COOP. Or you can go out and get an orphan team, right? And with that is like people will leave leagues, and then you can pick up their team. And that's equally fun because you'll have picks in this year's rookie draft, and you could trade all the players you don't like, get them out of here for new picks to get new players and keep all the players you do like. So two ways to play over at myffpc.com. Use promo code COOP. You can hit the QR code here. You click the description. That's all set up. That's the best place to play. And again, they'll give you $25 when you deposit 35 or more for the first time. Dustin, man, thank you so much, dude. I'm so excited to see. Every year I kind of follow what you got going on because, it's you're plugged in and you know how to look for the right stuff. So
it's a fun experience to come in and get to see these players and interview coaches. And it's something that I've watched the combine my whole life. So getting to do it in person has been great. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk about it. And well, I'm excited for this weekend. It's going to be fun. More players are showing up. They showed up yesterday and today. So we got more people coming in. So there's more people around, which just makes more buzz. And the buzz is building on certain players, so keep an eye out on your beat reporters, myself. You can catch me and Tristan for Dynasty Nerds are using the hashtag Combine Nerds 24 if you want to just follow that. That's a good hashtag. But there's plenty of people here who are just catching the buzz. Wendy's coming down this weekend, so there's we're getting a little more fantasy into the combine, which I think is great too.
All right,
because fantasy definitely makes the world go round.
So now there's three things I want. Three things now that I want. I want the question for Johnny Wilson.
Okay.
I want a picture of you and Wendy.
All right.
And I want if possible, daily buzz report, but at least an update towards Friday or so. I want to know who's got the most buzz. Because, you dropped an Andre Yoshivas there, and it's like, guys like that flying under the radar. T. Higgins, you don't know what's going to happen. I want to hear what people are saying about these deeper cut guys.
Yoshivas got some buzz from his coach yesterday. So
see what I'm saying, dude? All right, buzz report. Let's go. That's it for us. Thank you, guys. Dustin, you have fun out there. Thank you, guys in the chat. Thank you, Matt behind the glass. We're out of here. Cheers, everybody.